It's great to see you all here today for our kickoff of our Salon Series, our kickoff for 2016. I'm confident this is going to be a very exciting and critical year for gender equality. This year in Geneva, we have the opportunity, and I believe the responsibility, through discussions such as this one, to drive real progress on the long-standing issue of gender equality. We must capitalize on our expertise, tools, and the commitment we all share, and we must serve as a catalyst for change this year, next year, and well into the future. It is now my pleasure to introduce Nazir Afzal, a global leader on child protection and violence against women and girls, someone the New York Times has called the authentic voice of British justice.
This is a subject that means so much to me, and I was very fortunate to be national United Kingdom lead for tackling violence against women and girls, for tackling child protection, to tackling crimes within communities, largely because, as the ambassador just said, these were the voiceless. And it struck me maybe, I don't know, 15 years ago. I was prosecuting for the best part of 25 years. 15 years ago, I realized that prosecution was actually a failure, because by the time you prosecute somebody, somebody's been harmed. It needs to be said, and I'll say it, that violence against women and girls is about, it's the Holy Trinity. These are crimes committed in the name of the Father, the Son, and the blessed male members of the family. This is about male power and male control. This is about women being told that men are the answer when men aren't even one of the questions. This is about men simply dictating what's womanly and what isn't womanly, and women then constantly having to play catch-up, in effect, and suffering the consequences if they're not able to do so. In the United Kingdom, and it's true, I suspect, of the rest of the world, it takes at least an average of 35 incidents of abuse before they will seek help from the police. But if you're from a minority, it's 100 incidents. In the United Kingdom, 2 women a week, every week, are murdered in domestic abuse. But what's little known is that 10 will kill themselves every week because of domestic abuse in the home. There are between 8,000 and 10,000 forced marriages every year. The reality is that extremism towards women is everywhere. You know, I call it gender terrorism. I suspect some of you call it gender terrorism. But men refuse to do that, because then it requires a national and an international response. When I prosecuted, there was a gang of men that were abusing 47 young girls in the north of England over many, many years, and nobody wanted to do anything about it, largely because these young girls had very chaotic and very troubled backgrounds. It was thought that no jury would ever believe their stories. But it struck me, and I suspect it strikes you, that that's just continuing their abuse if you don't do anything about it. You can put in place all manner of structures to give them justice. The answer, ultimately, ladies and gentlemen, is around education. And you know, people who are very well-minded and highly educated think that the answer is around secondary education, you know, after 11 years old. You know and I know that most teenagers are completely set in their ways. They know and they understand what they think they know and they understand. The answer clearly is the earlier you educate. You know, kindergarten. There is research that says that you can tell the propensity to violence of a person from the age of 3. So what are we doing around 3-year-olds, 4-year-olds, 5-year-olds? What are we doing about explaining that women's rights is a human rights issue? What are we doing about explaining to people that, you know, there is no difference between men and women? You know, we should be treating each other fairly and equally at the age of 3, 4, and 5. 1 million children every year will witness domestic abuse. And that's really troublesome around young boys, because young boys see dad controlling mum through violence and think, well, actually, that's how I do it. And we perpetuate this issue for generations. We also believe in zero tolerance. We believe that if you've abused somebody, and there is evidence to show so, you should be prosecuted. Because if you don't have zero tolerance, people think that there's an opportunity for them to get away with it. In order to make a difference, you've got to act differently. So what have you done differently? Where are your male role models? I'm really pleased to see, actually, so many men in the room. Invariably, when I talk about gender violence, and I'm sure you have similar experiences, it's 98% women and 2 guys that were in the wrong room. You know, they were in a different meeting. You know, that's sad. Men laugh about gender violence. We do, don't we, men? You know, we allow women to be objectified. And legislation is a message. isn't it? Sometimes it doesn't matter that you've never been able to prosecute somebody. But the fact is you're sending a message to people that not only is this morally wrong, it's legally wrong, and there are consequences to your actions. So that's absolutely key for us and key for you. And using the media. I mentioned, I'm an advisor to loads of fictional television programs in the United Kingdom. It's absolutely fine to have documentaries and factual conversations on Discovery or whatever. But using fiction, which gets into people's psyche in a way that perhaps other things don't do. So, we've had storylines on stalking seen by 8 million people every week, storylines on forced marriage, storylines on domestic abuse. That's another means by which you get information out there. So we've got to find a means about getting messages out to young people in ways that they will get them. And it's also peer-to-peer stuff. No child, not even my own child, listens to adults anymore, But children do listen to other children and young people. And so having an army of young teenagers going into schools and colleges, explaining what gender-based violence is, what the consequences are, what you can do differently, is the answer. It's how you change minds and how you change mindsets. And I don't think that we do enough of that. And until such time as we educate it out, as working with as young people as possible, we're going to have this issue for generations and generations. I've been touched and privileged to hear the stories of hundreds of victims, thousands of victims. I've prosecuted more honour killings in the United Kingdom than anybody in the world. Tie up, and I'll finish, if I will, with another victim story, because this woman really changed my life in many ways about 14, 15 years ago. And she was a forced marriage victim, and she had her wedding ring, not on her wedding finger, but on the exact opposite finger of the other hand. And I said to her, "Why do you have your wedding ring on the wrong finger?" And she said, "Because they forced me to marry the wrong man." And I thought for a second, and I thought again for several seconds. That's it. She now has a life of hopelessness and despair, of daily sexual abuse, of child protection issues. Damn, she's living a hellish life for the rest of her life. And that is it. That's her protest. Because she, as the ambassador said, doesn't have a voice. I made it my responsibility and my duty to give her a voice. Thank you very much indeed.